The premise of Infamous is defined by a single question. If you gained superpowers, what kind of person would you become? Would you sacrifice yourself, both mentally and physically, to help others, make concerted efforts to keep everyone around you safe? Or would you neglect the general populace, leaving them to fend for themselves when they desperately need your help, even going as far as to suck the life force out of their body so you can top off your energy? While some of the decisions the game forces you to make verge on the silly side, Infamous overall does a good job of letting the evil and good playthroughs feel meaningfully different. There's 2 possible endings based on your karma level, but not only that, the entire color scheme shifts to match your style of play, blue or red, and that applies to every offensive attack at your disposal, and your aura itself, shining brilliantly in the sewers. Being a human glowstick has its perks. Who would have thought the prettiest the game can look is when in the sewer levels? The appearance of the main character, Cole, changes to match how far along the evil or good path you're on, the Infamous variation looking almost sickly compared to the relatively normal-looking hero version.
By the way, I didn't want to say anything before, but, you're starting to look different. Dark, twisted, that kind of thing. It's not good for your complexion, brother.
Your powers unlock slowly throughout the game, and you'll be able to use your experience to improve the ones you like, and your moral status impacts which upgrades you're able to acquire. The good side of the coin is far more precision-based, allowing you to have a greater control of your destruction, helping to avoid murdering any helpless civilians in the crossfire. Alternatively, the evil side sees your offense get far more chaotic and destructive. Where the upgraded grenades in the hero path can restrain bad guys, the Infamous one just increases the explosion count, a cluster of 7 grenades each throw. The megawatt hammer gets more spread out and disorderly when red, but the blue variation can be used to snipe enemies behind cover. Fire it in the sky, and the next target you've shocked will see the megawatt hammer home onto them. Even more, among the many generic side missions in the game, 15 of them, 5 for each section of the city, are specific to evil or good, and doing one will lock out its counterpart. As the good Cole, you'll be helping out the police in various ways, like rounding up dustmen and walking them to jail or protecting a police station, whereas evil Cole destroys their police station. As the good Cole, you'll be keeping a group of protesters safe as they foolishly protest the Reapers, and as evil Cole, you'll be murdering protesters, who this time are specifically protesting you. It doesn't stop there. These evil or good side missions dole out an optional and entirely unique power for Cole. 5 completed unlocks it, and 10 and 15 completed upgrades it accordingly. Either Chain Lightning or a Charge-Up Precision Blast. I'm sure you can guess which ability is for which alignment. Finally, the people of the city will react to you differently. If you're a hero, you'll often get approached by fans, wanting a picture, calling their friends and telling them how excited they are to see Cole in person. On the other hand, Infamous Cole gets rocks thrown at him, and if the masses are brave enough, they might even walk up and try to fight you. They don't last long, though. One thing the Infamous karma system most certainly doesn't accomplish is letting the player create their own path. Just about every choice is a ham-fisted either-or, some being as simple as, should I easily and effortlessly defuse a bomb, or let it blow up for no reason at all?
That bomb could blow any second. I could drain it and try and defuse it. Or I could just walk away. Let the thing blow up. Or I could just walk away. Let the thing blow up.
It's the man himself.
Do something, it's gonna blow. I'll do it myself.
It's great that there's 2 playthroughs worth of content here, but you'll never seriously question whether or not something is morally right or wrong, or whether the choice you made is the right one. You know the evil answer, and you know the good answer. The real question becomes, which version of Cole are you choosing this time? In a way, it's a bit of a shame. The famous quotes about power and responsibility that are shown off are quite fitting, and the Abraham Lincoln one especially took me by surprise. However, because you have such a defined character with Cole McGrath, and the vast majority of the decisions are explicit and don't affect you much, it's hard to take the quotes as seriously. Where these could make you second-guess some of your actions in a more morally gray and substantial RPG, this more felt like an art piece. They decided to hang up inspirational and thought-provoking quotes because it matched the pattern of the exhibit. It fits the theme, but it doesn't fit the game. Where I initially felt moved by the give a man a power line, thinking it was going to affect my choices and feelings moving forward about me as a person, Now, it more speaks about a character, about Cole, about Zeke, about Kessler. This isn't a game where the player gets to decide to be evil or good, it's a game where the player decides if Cole is going to be evil or good. It may seem like a small distinction, but it is rather significant. Something as simple as additional choices that make things more difficult for the player, or a collateral damage kill count at the end and a ranking off of that, would have gone a long way. It's easy to say you'll avoid hurting bystanders, but without seeing how often or little you've gotten innocent people killed, it doesn't feel as real. Sure, killing people in the crossfire moves the meter at the top a bit more towards evil, but when you're picking the good actions, it really doesn't matter how many civilians get slaughtered in your battles with the transients. Likewise, if the impromptu dilemmas were a bit more than which alignment do you want points with choice, I might have played around a bit more with my answers. The best ones by far were the water tower scenarios, especially the mandatory story mission. The choice is to destroy the device that's mixing tar into the water, or overload it. Destroying it means people won't get poisoned by this water supply anymore, but you'll take damage and lose a part of your maximum ammo for your electricity for a while. However, overloading it saves you from being harmed, but damns everyone even more, causing the tar to concentrate and get released completely into the water tower. This could be a coincidence, but on my evil run, I saw a lot more sick people on the roofs too, and if they attack, your vision will get blurry and combat becomes more difficult. I could see both results of the water tower scenario making a player feel the impact of their decision, whether or not they blindly followed the meta of advancing their already set-in-stone morals. Another one that has the same idea is the choice of exploding a gas tank or letting it hit you. Exploding it damages the golem conduit, but will kill all the wounded civilians nearby, and eating the damage makes Cole limp for the rest of the fight, and obviously hurts you. A decent premise and consequence, but this one comes with a significant downside attached. The inner monologue going through the choice is 10 times as lengthy as the choice itself. In fact, the time to act is so short that on my evil playthrough, I wasn't fast enough to shoot the tank, and after it exploded onto me, the game said my actions have made me less evil. Sadly, both of these issues aren't exclusive to this one decision. So often it felt like Cole going through the options in his head for no reason other than to help the player understand which one is good and which one is evil, ate far more time than the supposed moral dilemma really deserved. In a way, it's good that they're pretty clear. The game doesn't attempt to trick you into making the opposite choice or anything, but there needs to be a better ratio of time spent explaining the situation versus the time it takes to choose, or even how long that choice affects things. A side mission leading to a monologue about stealing or not stealing from this guy to get more blast shards, the collectible that upgrades your maximum electricity, feels a bit much for such a quick and mostly meaningless outcome. I think a good compromise is the choice that's prompted when you're chasing Alden's Phantom. There is a rather obtrusive cutscene laying out the scenario. A guy is strung up upside down, leave him to the mob or shoot the rope to cut him loose. Except this is laying some groundwork. You'll encounter these when running around the world, so really, that time spent fully digesting the situation is made worth it as the game goes on. However, this one in particular is a good example of the other issue. The best decisions are when Cole needs to do one thing or a different thing. The water tower one wins in this regard as well. Use Shockwave to destroy it completely or overload it with your electric shocks. But when it's the choice of action versus inaction is inherently less satisfying in every instance, regardless of the outcome. Whether it's allowing a gas tank to pelt you in the face, or walking away as the civilians taunt and DX suck-it chop the strung-up victim, doing nothing simply doesn't feel as rewarding. It also means any action at all could see the game pretending you made a decision, sometimes in silly fashion. I wanted to kill everyone here, everyone, since I was cosplaying a rogue psychopath who has no qualms about murdering for fun. However, as I started my rampage, I also technically lowered the guy off the rope, and it said I was a good boy. Yeah, not quite what I had in mind. Besides two big decisions that come about through the story, there's not much here that'll truly give players a reason to take a moment and think about what they'll do. The game rewards aligning yourself completely with either side, since you don't just spend experience to improve your powers. The higher upgrades require Cole to be at higher rankings in the respective alignment. There's no benefit to going neutral. In fact, it's a punishment really, so straying from the side of the coin you've already resigned yourself to on any decision is less optimal. I'm not sure this problem needs solving, as the game is perfectly fine as it is currently, but I think morality systems that provide some type of positive to neutral pathways end up better for it, be it story differences, character building reasons, or even a little more freedom on which abilities you can employ, even if some are still locked behind advancing on either side of the binary. All in all, the karma system, with its faults here and there, is a net win for the game. I know back in the late 2000s, good and evil moral choices were all the rage, and while it is funny to see some of the more ludicrous either-ors Infamous throws at you, the end result is a more varied and malleable experience than a standard action-adventure game. You feel the impact of your choices through your character, and the world responds to them in kind. This idea goes a bit further than just the good and evil system, as the open world and its side quests play a role in how much you're hassled on a moment-to-moment basis. I'll get to the enemies and the 3 acts of the game a bit later on, but for now, it's important to know that there are 3 islands in the city: the Neon, the Warren, and the Historic District. You begin in Neon, and the others slowly open up throughout the story. I wouldn't necessarily say each island significantly stands out from the others, but the effort put in to make the city appear run down and in chaos is something special. The visuals on the whole are surprisingly nice to look at. Even though the most prominent color by far is gray, so many of the streets and alleyways and sidewalks are densely packed with litter, debris, and malformed cars. Art direction plays a big role in giving any game's visuals a personality, and we're seeing it right here. This city has a story to it, it has character. While I don't quite understand why so many people are driving cars around like there's anywhere to go, I mean, the city has been locked down for 2 weeks and there are gangs murdering people for fun, and I guess the same could go for the people walking around, but still, even though it's a bit dumb, the end result is the city being more than a quiet, static, and unchanging place. Nowhere is this felt more strongly than with the enemies, shockingly enough, as you'll have a say in how many Reapers, Dustmen, and First Son goons populate areas of the map. For some inexplicable reason, completing a side mission prevents enemies from respawning in a very specific radius around the starting point. As you tackle these, you'll see the red zones turn to yellow. A larger percentage of the map is enemy-free thanks to your involvement. Zeke, Cole's best friend, even radios in about how much you're helping the city.
Just want to let you know the crime is way down. It's good to see. Keep it up, brother. Saw some woman pulling the boards off her windows. I couldn't believe it. Guess she's not worried about people busting in there anymore.
On one hand, this is a very silly concept. Absolutely, taking down a murder bus, preventing civilians from being abducted by Reapers, destroying a truck full of poisonous tar. Sure, I can see how that would make the city a better place, how it would clearly aid the citizens living in that immediate area. But when the side mission is you helping a photographer by posing for some pictures, destroying a single building's worth of surveillance equipment, locating a package on the ground somewhere with a photo for reference, or racing against the clock in a time attack parkour challenge, chaining together uplinks, I don't know, I could see a roundabout reason for why they could be inspiring others and helping in some sort of indirect way, maybe, but to go as far as prevent enemies from spawning in that area, there's a disconnect there. Like, this guy wants me to blow up cars, and I comply, murdering the lady inside along with it. It is a little stupid, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. The overall mechanic is strong. Being able to literally transform the city into a more hospitable place, one that makes it specifically safer for you to roam around in, is a powerful idea. In a few years, Ubisoft will release Far Cry 3, and it'll also feature a sort of make the overworld safer for the player system, but it doesn't matter in Far Cry 3 since you can already fast travel. It also doesn't feel rewarding in the long run, as all you're doing is inadvertently preventing one of the only spontaneous signs of life in the game, the impromptu skirmishes between the 2 sides of the island. Without it, the world itself is mostly boring and lifeless. Having a noticeable impact on the game world in this fashion sounds like a great thing, but with the wrong game, it doesn't work. In Infamous, you're a superhero, so already the idea of getting bad guys off the streets matches up. You have a karma system, one side of it encouraging you to let Cole be the savior of the city. Finally, there's no fast travel in the game, so the very real result of getting from point A to B without the hassle of enemies on rooftops firing at you non-stop is very appealing. Now, I do think the radio calls from Zeke are a bit much. In the first island, practically every time you finish a side mission, he pipes up about how everyone is feeling so much safer and unboarding their windows, or how the trash isn't blocking the roads anymore, and what have you.
I'm so dang glad I don't have to wade through 8 feet of garbage anymore. Man, people really turning this place around.
It's a lot of talk, but from what I can tell, nothing actually changes in the environment. A trashed and ruined city block before enemies are cleared will look the exact same after the enemies are cleared, even with a load screen in between. This could be a sample size issue, but even when looking at the same streets on a completed every side mission finished good run versus a completed evil run, the amount of garbage and debris looks roughly the same. At the very least, the city feels drastically different at the end of a playthrough. Since both alignments had similar looking Empire cities prior to the final boss fight, I'd imagine the only trigger for this is the good or bad ending, but either way, Evil Cole's version is staggeringly oppressive. Kind of a shame this won't be seen much, given it's only here after the credits roll for a certain ending, but regardless, the contrast between the two Empire cities when the game is finished is a great touch. Speaking of a great touch, if this was a Dorkaxe video from 2020, I might have shown off some clips of the NPCs behaving very robotically, how if you stare at them long enough, they cycle through looking in the same garbage cans over and over. Man, kind of a bummer, this isn't very immersive. Except for 2024 Dork, that's simply not interesting to me. Instead, I'd rather highlight one of my absolute favorite little touches Sucker Punch threw into this game world. Every now and then, usually when you walk past a TV, a news report will play, or the anarchist hacker guy will do a sermon or complain about something. If you're alone, it simply reads as a slightly more clever way of doling out some exposition and updates to the narrative. However, when one of these triggers when you're in the streets, there's a chance for a small gathering to take place. The people nearby might be drawn to the TV just like you are. Empire City, the location you're in, has been hit with some kind of disease, and the islands have been quarantined from the rest of the world. The civilians are all stuck here, some sick even, and after a few weeks, things aren't looking good. But this, the TV broadcasts, these moments where they can get some semblance of normalcy, understandably attracts a crowd. I was just so struck at how natural this was, this communal moment Cole, and by extension I, was sharing with the townsfolk here. For a moment, we're all the same, eager to hear what's on the news. It's really small and likely pretty simple, but it had a pretty noticeable impact on how I saw this game world and these people. Well, at least for my first playthrough. On the second one, I started sucking out the marrow from people's bones and blasting away people for fun. You can even beat up quest givers. See a quest you don't like? Fuck 'em. Beat 'em up. Murder 'em. Funny enough, they become off-limits after you accept the quest, and the text on screen is hilarious.
Don't hurt that pedestrian!
But everyone else? Totally fine. Fuck off, guy. Not every game needs to give players the potential to be a psychopath and kill everyone they see, but because you can in Infamous, man, choosing not to feels meaningful. The world feels alive, dynamic. You aren't the only thing that can cause a quest giver to be unavailable either. If the NPC was a cop and there's enemies nearby, they might be in the middle of a firefight. Your confusion of where the side mission marker went might turn into appreciation when you realize that this isn't a static, unchanging vendor of content, he's a participant in what's going on around him. One of the biggest shocks when going back to an open-world game of the 7th console generation was the lack of fast traveling. You can't zip yourself to a mission halfway across the island. However, you can zip yourself to a mission halfway across the island. Public transportation. Yes, it might be a foreign concept to many Americans like myself, but Infamous shows just how effective it can be, albeit while also showing some of its downsides. While it might not always be fun to run to one of these if one isn't nearby, or to climb up the side of the support pillar things when you can't just hop off a building, hitching a ride on a train or grinding yourself until you finally arrived at the place you're aiming for is a very elegant inclusion given the game's framing. This is taken even further when you factor in the power lines, which help fill in the gaps where the train tracks don't get to. Electric Man uses electricity to grind to his heart's delight. When you get the static booster, you can really start to zip-zap all around town, easily leaping and landing from one wire to the next. It's a lot of fun. The static thrusters themselves, though, aren't what I was hoping for. I'm glad they're in the game, I'll take it over nothing, but after being spoiled with glider mechanics in games released in the past 7 years, this feels a bit underwhelming. It drops you down very quickly after a second or two. It's very much not meant for a linear gradual descent, one that can clear large gaps like a building to a building. It's also not meant to be used as a quick correctional double jump move, like some platformers have, since you don't have a ton of control over it. It won't reset your velocity, it carries your previous momentum, so you only get a little say in left or right. If you're on the ground, it also won't help you move quicker either. It's always best to keep running at your normal speed. No, what this is meant for is what I showed already, very small jumps, and staying in the air for a little bit longer than normal. Better than nothing. I'm glad it's here as opposed to it being absent. Before we get into the other powers though, it's best to run down the climbing mechanics, as it's one of the core features of the entire game. Around the late 2000s, a cluster of releases featured their own take on scaling walls and buildings: Assassin's Creed, Uncharted, and Infamous. All three of them go about it in slightly different ways, and there's an argument to be made that all three of them are ideal for the games they reside in. The two that feel the most similar are Infamous and Assassin's Creed, as it's less so a mandatory pace switch-up and more a free-form expression of vertical freedom. If your goal is to reach the top of a building, in both you'll be searching for the specific handholds and outcrops to propel yourself upwards. The big difference, however, is Assassin's Creed requires objectively less input on behalf of the player. Holding up, and sometimes angling left or right a bit, is all you'll really need to do. There are a few occasions where a wall run into a leap to grab a beam placed perpendicular to Altair is possible and advantageous, but those were few and far between, and generally not necessary to complete the game. With Infamous, the jump button is a part of the climb. It's not enough to simply hold up, you'll need to look around and see where you want to jump. At its worst, a building will have uniform ledges spaced the same distance apart, meaning you can keep spamming X and it'll all work out, but more often finding a sign or a pipe or other random metal objects are what you'll be jumping towards, and needing to press jump makes it a more intimate process. It's a lot more interactive on a moment-to-moment level, especially during parkour sections where you'll need to leap multiple times in a row to platform over a drop. In Assassin's Creed, these moments simply ask you to hold R1 and keep the control stick pointed up. It looks neat, but it's a mostly mindless process. In Infamous though, specific X button taps and careful maneuvering to land safely are required, which enhances the interactive piece of this interactive work of fiction. That's not to say there isn't any help on behalf of the game to smoothen things out. Cole will be magnetized towards the proper ledges, pipes, and so on, and for the most part it usually lines up fairly well. It doesn't sacrifice player agency in the name of convenience and accessibility, but it's a far sleeker ordeal than it might have been without the assistance. That said, it can often go overboard, where you'll want to drop to the ground and the game will play it safe and make you grab a ledge, which can get quite annoying when it happens during missions with a time limit of some kind. Pressing circle will make Cole let go of whatever he's holding onto, or drop from what he's standing on, but it's not as decisive as it needs to be. A lot of games feature this hassle, even newer ones. Macro movements shouldn't be necessary to unstick yourself from the environment. That said, Infamous drops the ball somehow in the opposite way at times too. There are plenty of moments where the game should obviously know Cole is heading in the direction of a pipe or sign and start the gluing process, but instead you keep sailing on by and fail the mission. The checkpoint system is extremely generous, thankfully, keep that in mind for a later discussion, but it's still a baffling sensation. It actually fooled me a few times, making me second guess if the object in question was what I was supposed to grab. Definitely not what you want for your climbing mechanic, having players doubt which handholds are real or not. The sewer levels had this happen now and then too, which is extra frustrating, since right below you is hazardous water that'll surely kill you if you stand in it for more than 3 seconds. That should be enough time to hop back on the pipe, and it sometimes is, but if the magnetization is turned off randomly, you won't even be able to save yourself. A real shame. Besides those issues, the platforming, parkour, and climbing mechanics are a real treat. It should say something that one of my favorite side missions was counter-surveillance, where you go around a single building looking for blinking red camera lights so you can destroy them with a button prompt. Yes, the gameplay of simply scaling the walls, dropping down and jumping up, finding the footholds and vantage points, was fun as hell. If there was ever a third-person Dying Light sort of game, I'd want them to use Infamous's climbing as a foundation. One of the biggest surprises for me when first starting out was how the game wanted me to engage with combat. I don't know why, but I was under the impression this was a brawler button masher type thing, where you run up to enemies and smack them around a bit. No, practically the opposite, actually. This is a third-person shooter, except you don't have a gun, you have lightning powers. Enemies will throw grenades and shoot rockets at you, you'll have to avoid incoming gunfire, you have grenades of your own you can throw, and there's even a cover system. Infamous might just be the most unique third-person shooter I've ever played. It's not the best one, but it's certainly novel. Holding down L1 raises your aiming reticle, then R1 is used for firing off your regular electric shocks. You have a lightning mana bar of sorts near the top, which every other power takes from, but the normal R1 lightning shocks are free. This is your bread and butter. In almost every situation, it's not a horrible idea to keep L1 held down, and since aiming is a bit finicky, spam R1. You have this circle here, and it being red or blue, depending on which alignment you are, just conveys you're in range to hit whatever it is you're pointing at. It doesn't mean that you're hovering over an enemy. Both the hostile forces and the terrain around them will evoke the same color change, and the circle turning red or blue also doesn't guarantee you'll make contact with the enemy in question. Somewhere in this circle is where your bolt will strike, and given how little leeway you're given with the enemy hitboxes, especially noticeable when you're zoomed in with the sniper ability, this will lead to a lot of ever so slightly missed shots. Regular chain link fencing acting as a formidable shield against your default shooting is ridiculously clever, given the idea of a man using electricity to attack enemies, but when it's just the environment getting in the way, like elevated guardrails or something, it can get a little tedious, searching for that itty-bitty head hitbox. This becomes even more apparent when the enemy numbers increase, and they're practically always surrounding you on rooftops. I have no doubt my PS3 controller is partly to blame. The dead zones and sensitivity on it are kinda wonky, but for the entirety of my 2 playthroughs, spamming R1 as I make slight adjustments on my stick to hopefully, finally make contact with the enemy was a fairly regular occurrence. Landing the circular reticle over the enemy in the exact way the game wants is already a process, and getting shot at multiple times throughout, causing Cole to stagger left and right, throwing your aim off slightly, adds to the struggle. Why am I standing out in the open trying to defeat faraway enemies? Let me explain. The cover system isn't good, basically at all, the only exception being when holding on to a ledge. The leg hook brings some flair to this tactic. You feel and look cool while doing it. Well, at least I think so. Besides that, the normal cover system isn't reliable, as getting into it is a crapshoot, and practically any input makes Cole stand up, so getting shot in the face repeatedly due to Cole not staying crouched like you want him to can be quite frustrating. The circle button is very contextual, as it's normally the roll move, which is decent for clearing distance when trying to run away behind a building, but pressing it near certain walls and cars without any directional input is the way to take cover, and it's not as responsive and exact as it really ought to be. It's probably for the best. This being a strict cover shooter would have felt pretty bad, but the point is, cover isn't the perfect solution, and neither is rolling to save yourself from a barrage of bullets. There is a shield power you'll acquire much later on in the game, but sadly this feels terrible too. It's unlike any shield you've ever used in any other game. Hold R2 and he'll lifelessly throw it up, and your camera angle, kind of, determines where it protects. The coverage is pretty rough, and activating it requires a lot of decisive input. It's not enough to hold R2 down prematurely after you land an attack. You have to stop what you're doing and then press R2 for the game to realize what you're trying to do. Just imagine you're playing a Souls game, hey, like Demon Souls came out the same year, and you start holding L1 as your sword is still swinging. The moment after your animation is complete, your character will raise their shield, of course. No, not the case for Infamous. There are some actions you can get away with while it's up, like jumping and static thrusters, and others you can't, like, well, literally everything else. It overall feels unsatisfying and largely unhelpful. All that is to say, a good offense in Infamous is usually better than a good defense. Standing straight up, running around, spamming your best attacks while fighting with the reticle is the name of the game, especially on hard mode while in the evil pathway. When playing as a good Cole, you do get a bit more finesse, firing the megawatt hammer into the air and landing a shock by simply connecting with any part of the enemy's body is a really nice way to circumvent the barriers that get in your way, while also not damning you if you missed a headshot when zoomed in with the sniper. I mentioned the slight recoils that happen when Cole gets hit with an enemy bullet, which messes up your aim even more, but that's nothing compared to the moving vehicles you'll be stationed on. When the bus turns, the train curves, or the helicopter thing swerves, sure that rhymes, you'll have to keep up with who you're already aiming at by adjusting for the movement. Obviously this is completely logical, but it's such an enormous hassle given how sensitive and finicky the aiming is. This is another reason why the precision sniper shot is so valuable. It slows down time, meaning you won't get affected by the vehicle's momentum as much. Speaking of the precision shot, let's talk about how you acquire the powers, as it's one of the highlights of Infamous. I've mentioned before how much the game feels like it's responding to what you're doing in it, and the way you acquire new skills is no exception. Since you're Electricity Man, and most of the city is without power, it's your job to go into the sewers and use your own body as a conduit, turning the city back on again. There's a lot here that makes these excellent. First off, there's a very real sense of difference between when the power is off and when the power is on. Unlike the side missions supposedly helping the town clean up and look better, even though they don't affect the visuals, when it's time to venture into an area of the town that doesn't have power, you can feel the shift happening in real time. It's not as dramatic as the green shift in the doorway to Blighttown, but your screen gets a bit darker, the edges lose focus, and everything feels a bit more drab. This coincides with how this is affecting Cole. The main way Cole regains his health back when damaged, and how he regains energy for his mana bar at the top, is draining electricity out of nearby connections to the power grid. Click the left stick and you'll see lightning bolts all around, which indicate the nearby recharge stations. A car, a street lamp, generator, traffic light, you name it, Cole can regain health and electricity from it. Well, when venturing into a territory without power, you're practically defenseless. There's no easy access to healing stations or mana refills, and what's more, these areas are always ones where side missions haven't spawned yet, so there are no shortage of enemies here. Making your way to the sewer entrance is always a daunting process, and you'll have to rely on sneak attacks, rooftop runs, and sometimes careful planning to avoid getting bombarded by overwhelming forces. This impacts Evil Cole much more than Good Cole, but I'll get to that in a bit. No power means the railways and electric wires are out too, and the visual of Cole sliding effortlessly, then abruptly slowing down and beginning his tightrope walking animation sums up the dramatic shift pretty well. He's no longer in his element. Turning the power back on helps everyone, and helps you as a player dramatically. Secondly, the sewer levels themselves are fantastic. They're mostly simple platforming and a handful of combat encounters, but the change of scenery, allowing your blue or red glow to dominate the landscape, is enchanting. For all the times the climb mechanics failed me down here, I'd gladly platform on metal pipes and walkways again and again. It's a good time. It's also a lot more than some other open worlds do when it comes to opening up a part of the map. Around this time, Assassin's Creed was implementing the towers, and while I don't hate the tower concept nearly as much as others do, I actually quite like them, even in Far Cry 3, going through a mini-dungeon and using yourself, your character's body, to cause the map to open up is novel, fits with the theme, and is a ton of fun to boot. Finally, the substations unlock a new power-up for you, so not only does this come with all of the positives mentioned already, you get a brand new skill to play around with as a direct result. The layers found with the substation missions came as a complete shock, and their recurring nature doesn't serve as a negative, but a positive. Even in my second playthrough, I always looked forward to these, while simultaneously dreading the approach to get there given the lack of power and increased enemy count. I've already touched on a few of the powers, but some of the others deserve some discussion as well. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest point against the alignment system is that it makes the good playthrough significantly easier, and it's all due to one very slight change in how the electric shock gets upgraded. Sure, getting explosive headshots is nice as Evil Cole, but something far more beneficial is gaining back electricity with every landed hit. Out of nearby power sources? Well, if you can land a few bolts, you might be able to earn back a precision shot or grenade. Not the case as Evil Cole. Perhaps this props up the bio-leech a bit more, which is a genius idea on paper, but because it's a slow process and you can't do it mid-battle without taking more damage, it's not nearly as efficient as staying in combat and earning some charge through pure offense. Besides the bread and butter shock, you're also given Thunder Drop and Shockwave at the start of the game. The Shockwave is extremely valuable, one of the tools you'll be using throughout the whole game. They can send enemies flying, and with the good side upgrades, make them hover in midair and slowly fall back to Earth. This creates a wonderful 1-2 combo of launching foes and shocking them while they have nowhere to run. It can also launch enemies off buildings and out of your way, can go through fences, so it's a decent workaround if one is blocking your normal shots, and finally, it can reflect certain enemy attacks back at them, such as rockets, grenades, and flaming rocks. It'll get used a ton, and while I do have a slight problem with it, it's most applicable when discussing the enemies, so I'll hold off for now. The first substation power you'll gain isn't an offensive move, but instead opens up options for when NPCs are on the ground. You can heal them, restrain them, or suck the life force out of them. The karma is pretty nuanced with these. Healing citizens is good, restraining bad guys is good, restraining citizens is bad, and sucking the life force out of anyone is bad. Being able to heal makes certain escort and protection missions a lot more manageable, since they don't just instantly die, you can go and touch them up a bit. You can heal pedestrians who are on the ground randomly, or if you catch them in the act, you'll see that they just run into a wall and fall over. And healing them will up your XP and karma ever so slightly. What's that, Doc? These people are sick? No, they aren't. The XP gain isn't substantial enough that you'd think to cheese the system. It would take so many heals to gain ground in either experience or karma. You can knock down someone you've just healed and heal them again, but after a while it stops granting experience when it's the same person over and over. In fact, it looks like it's a refractory period based on your area, as one time I was healing many in a row, but it stopped showing experience gain. Probably for the best. Doing this 1,000 times isn't very interesting or fun. Restraining is used for some side missions, but other than that, it's just a quick way to gain a little more good karma in combat encounters. Be sure not to hit them while they're restrained though. A restrained kill is an evil action. Finally, the Bio-Leech is as clever as it is horrifying. The sound it makes is unsettling, but even more, you have to mash the square button for it to even work. The person desperately tries to fight Cole off, but it's no use. He'll get there anyway, and the struggle just makes it an all-around sadder experience. A phenomenal touch by Sucker Punch, this little nothing sells how evil this action really is. This fully heals you and completely recharges your energy, so giving someone the suck in tight spots or on the way to a destination is pretty convenient. The shield is the last thing you'll unlock in the second island, and it's the worst placed power by far. The main enemy it's helpful against is the Golem Conduit, since they have a rapid-fire bullet hell attack, which you can't do anything about unless you find cover. The game makes you fight so goddamn many of these, and then, finally the game gives you a shield, after you've already encountered the majority of the ones you'll see in the game. Such a weird decision, and those enemies suck, but I'll get to that in a minute. Finally, the only thing left to unlock is on the third island, Lightning Storm. Hold down on the D-pad, and then move the 6-axis controller side to side to control its movement? Motion controls, yay! It doesn't feel the best, but the few missions where you're expected to use it definitely feel designed around it, and hearing the cascade of XP sound effects chime in hits like crack.
Bastards. Die.
All in all, it's not a very involved power, and it drains Cole dry when you're not standing on some type of electric floor, so it's a bit forgettable. Now, the missions of Infamous are quite something. Here's the thing I haven't mentioned as of yet about Infamous. It's difficult to the point where it feels unfair, yet it's an incredibly easy game. Some of the missions are so gruelingly tough that you could be on the verge of tearing your hair out, but when the game loads you back in, you realize how little there was to worry about a failure state. The game goes above and beyond with its checkpoints. There's at least 3 or 4 in a single story mission, and no matter how many bullshit enemies had accumulated last time, either fairly or unfairly, I have no idea why a turret truck was placed there this time, you'll spawn in practically seconds away from your death with a fresh load, the only enemies around you being the one Sucker Punch intended for that section. You can never lose your way into a corner, every bit of progress is a success. The only time where that might not be the case is the Defend the Bus missions, some of the hardest in the game, due to the health of said bus staying the same even after you load back in. It's also worth noting that this PS3 game has near instant load times. I have no idea how they accomplished this, but it eased frustrations tremendously. Those moments where you couldn't grab a ledge when climbing and fell to your death? Not so bad when the checkpoint is generous and you load in immediately. The same goes for every seemingly difficult mission in the game. Some of these would be a fucking nightmare if you had to start them all over each and every time you died, truly. But no, you'll be staying the course, and your momentum won't ever grind to a complete halt. The only exception is traveling to a mission, such as the substation sewers. If you die on the way, you might be sent back a very long distance, as you respawn at the nearest available med clinic. The approaches feel appropriately tense as a result, though, especially considering the added difficulty of not having any electric current in the area to recharge yourself with. The plentiful checkpoints do come at a cost, though. There were times where I genuinely wanted to try the whole thing again, getting better and seeing what the right successive decisions were. For instance, the time you're meant to chase a helicopter around the island. It's almost insulting when you fail because you were slightly too far away, and I mean literally, look how far away I was, that's the end point. But the difference between my first try on a first playthrough versus my first try on the second is night and day. On my good run, the checkpoints essentially carried me throughout the city, but on my second playthrough, I was good enough to find the proper wires and make the correct moves. Sometimes it's fun to improve, and the frequent checkpoints almost always prevent that feeling. Also, and this might be intentional, they lock you out of trying a choice again. Remember the conduit golem gas tank problem, where it happened too quickly for my evil self to do the evil action? I jumped into a lake afterwards, and it loaded back up after the decision had already happened. A real shame. There's one final reason the game avoids becoming a pain during certain difficult missions, though, and that's the exploit of gaining electricity via your own attacks. You can target specific objects in the environment, spam R1, and suck that electricity you just used back up. Again, regular bolts don't cost you electricity, so you're gaining it by using a free action. I don't think this was intended, since it's not tutorialized at all. However, I am playing on the Greatest Hits edition with a patch, so they could have gotten rid of this if they wanted to, and it also doesn't work when you're in a zone without power. Fighting your way to the sewer entrance in the Dark Districts is still daunting due to the lack of infinite health and electricity. Maybe they realized this was a good thing to keep in the game? Without it, I surely would have felt a great deal of frustration, as relying on the developer-placed generators and floodlights, with their finite amount of energy up for grabs before they're empty, is almost infeasible. Hard mode especially, and near the end of the game where enemies have inflated health pools, and especially on an evil playthrough, my goodness, no way you aren't using this exploit if you know about it. There's also something to be said about the ease of access to this gateway of electricity when you're in the thick of things and in a panic. It's often quicker to see a dumpster, shock it to oblivion and suck it back up, than it is to click the stick and track down where a, hopefully large, vendor of energy is. In the end, the lenient checkpoints and exploitable electric drain are a positive for the game, if only to make Act 3 less terrible than it already is. Think of your favorite single-player game and think about your favorite moments. Were any of them in the final act of the game? I'd wager probably not. Now think of the final hours of the game. Were they as good as what came before? I'd wager probably not. It's obviously not a simple task to make the final act of a video game be on par with the rest, and you could debate if it's due to creative stumbles, poor balancing decisions, or even the developers simply running out of time. Hello, Dark Souls. Infamous's third act is by far the worst of the bunch, and it's not simply due to the lack of new upgrades to acquire. The enemies have seemingly 5 times as much health as the earlier ones, and the visual designs of Kessler's minions are a gigantic step down from the Dustmen of the Warren or the Reapers of the Neon. The Reapers are bright red and have a black hole where their face should be. You can eventually see how they're being made. Sasha, a bad guy, is filling citizens up with mind control tar, and they look to be more tar than human at this point. The Dustmen have trash bag costumes on, making them clearly stand out amongst the general populace. The lore is that the homeless people of the district rose up and took hold of the island after the quarantine hit, and, well, that's why they all look like this. Their sound design is stellar. When you're in the missions where you'll escort them to jail or whatnot, you can hear their makeshift armor clanking and rattling around as they walk.
Walk faster.
I remember thinking, when going from Act 1 to 2, seeing these new enemies to fight on the next island, and then the new power of static thrusters, holy shit, Infamous is somehow still getting better. I was immensely surprised and delighted. So often games start with their best foot and get steadily worse. Then, well, Act 3 hits, and now there's mines placed all over the rooftops for no reason, and if their potential to slow your pacing down didn't upset you enough, the beeping alone will cause you to detest their inclusion.
There's a big fight brewing between the Dustmen and the First Sons.
There's grenade floaty dickbag enemies that can turn invisible, near insta-kill shotgun enemies that can turn invisible, everyone's health is buffed to a stupid degree, and the visuals for the main flavor of bad guys, the doofuses and gas masks, are so muted in color I legitimately can't tell them apart from regular citizens half the time. On one hand, I can see an argument for why this is an interesting decision. If you're a good Cole, you're likely trying to avoid harming innocent people while in a combat encounter, and this makes it that much harder. You'll need to be even more precise and deliberate with your actions to save as many civilians as you can. This does accent the chaos versus order idea, since in an evil playthrough, this doesn't affect a whole lot, just blast everyone in your way, who cares. Through that lens, I can see someone appreciating this, as it's an escalation of a pre-existing concept. I just don't think they pull it off, though. There's not enough reason to avoid hitting pedestrians in your way in the first place, and more often, you aren't battling the devil on your shoulder egging you on. No, you're battling the visual language of the game, and ultimately end up having a worse time with the basic combat encounters. Because these guys are basically bullet sponges now, lightning bolt sponges, fights drag on far longer than you would ever want them to. These enemies take so many more hits to take down. Since there's less of everything in the historic district, my advice is to do the good or evil side missions, then skip everything else, rush to the story missions. Fuck all of these lame-looking Kessler minions, and fuck the rocket launcher guys too. They aren't exclusive to the third island, but I really don't like them. They're obviously meant to encourage you to use the shockwave power to deflect the rockets back at them, but the delay on the shockwave makes it more of a chore than it really should be, especially when you're in the dreaded Defend Bus/John helicopter missions where they start stacking to a ludicrous degree. For how damaging their attacks are, they don't have a good sound cue associated with them. Early on, we're introduced to the kamikaze guys, and you can hear them coming from a mile away. It's great. They even do a little dance move to try to avoid your shots. Not bad. The rockets, though, don't get any such audio cue. You'll just get obliterated at times, and the lesson you'll take from this is to keep your head on a swivel, I guess. The tiny runaway spider pricks that pop up in Act 2 aren't great either. They're more of a pest than anything else, since they run away when you turn towards them. On an evil playthrough, thankfully, the chain lightning does a good job of wiping them all out. The golem conduits are another pain in the ass. They have a ludicrous amount of health, and none of their attacks feel good to work around. The fireball can't be shockwaved back early for some stupid reason, so you have to wait for him to fire it in the air, but because it has an arc to it, you'll have to aim at the sky, forcing you to take your eyes off the enemy. Smart. The bullet spray is dumb for reasons I've already laid out, and because these are the main bigger variants of Warren, you'll see them far too often. Contrast that to the gas mask conduits, who have a much more interesting visual flavor, but don't show up as often as they really ought to. Or maybe they're just so weak and pathetic I forget they exist half the time. As tedious as the spider bimbos and wannabe taluses can be, they don't get the crown of worst enemy in the game. Nope, no siree. Any guesses? No, not the rocket launcher guys. Not the random invisible assholes that show up at the end who have no right to be in a video game with a pace as fast as Infamous. The winner of worst enemy in Infamous, maybe in any game I played in the last year, goes to these fuckers. These robots, 1, hover around, 2, are small, 3, can turn invisible, 4, never fucking stay still, and 5, simply spit out grenades. I dare someone in Sucker Punch's design team to come out and defend these guys. You can't. Before we get to the story, there's the 3 bosses of the game, Sasha, Alden, and Kessler. None of them are very good, the best one being Sasha by a landslide. Her power of a combination of seduction and mind control provide a unique-looking encounter at the very least. It's not that difficult, but essentially, you try to find her when she's spawning the hallucinations, and once you stun her, run up and do a Tap X minigame. It feels a little weird to overpower her and rip off her tentacle thing, but it's not bad. Sasha is an interesting character, and her backstory is fascinating, but I won't have much to say about her in this video. Her voice acting is great, though, and it makes the evil playthrough that little bit more enjoyable, given that she'll be in your ear for most of the side missions.
My love, how I missed you. Please watch over my beloveds. I tend to get into trouble without supervision.
Alden is a bigger golem conduit, and that's basically all there is to it. He does have this classic Alden line.
Holy shit.
Ignorant pissant!
But for the most part, the majority of what I said about the golems applies to this fight too. Kessler is the final boss, and he's not an enjoyable encounter. I don't know exactly why, but my normal and hard playthroughs on this boss fight were drastically different. In the good playthrough, I just chucked grenades and shit, and he went down. In the evil playthrough, I just couldn't get anything to work, and getting stunned and nearly killed every other second was so goddamn annoying. Thankfully, the chain lightning is something he outright can't block, so I spammed that to win the day. This is definitely not a game with exemplary boss fights, which is a shame in one respect, but that's not at all what these kind of games excel at, one-on-one engagements, so it's understandable and doesn't drag down the experience much. The best time to talk about the story of Infamous was at the beginning of the video, and the second best time to talk about the story of Infamous is right now, so let's get to it. The game begins immediately, without any menus or exposition of any kind. You press start, and a gigantic blue explosion engulfs an entire island, launching a bus at the helicopter that's granting us this camera angle. The screen cuts to black, we hear someone talking about the vitals of someone else, and boom, we're here, there's Cole. Someone randomly does the suck it crotch chop in front of a floodlight, and now we have to escape what appears to be the very heart of whatever explosion that was. Cole gets electrocuted on his way out, but shockingly, how many times have I done that pun now? He didn't fall over dead. On one hand, this out-of-nowhere introduction to the game is captivating and gets players right in the action. The visuals look fantastic, explosions and fire all around you, Cole looks sturdy, and even has a limping animation. To me, this was a signal that this game was meant to be taken seriously. A lot of effort went into this opening set piece, and the developers trusted the player enough to be invested in whatever is going on, even without dialogue or cutscenes explaining anything before they started moving the character. However, on the other hand, us being in the dark about the events that transpired before the blast, even 5 to 10 minutes before, isn't without its downsides. Infamous, in an attempt at making this feel like a superhero origin story, uses comic strip-like cutscenes with Cole's voice playing the role of narrator whenever a major event is unfolding. A fun idea, but although the visuals are vibrant and the comic book gimmick appropriate for this story and game, it can really catch you off guard given how quick the pacing is for these. The first one after the explosion explains that something happened, a plague broke out, the government quarantined the city is going to hell fast, and Trish lost her sister, and Zeke is there, and Cole is getting superpowers. Also, 14 days have passed, and you and Zeke live on top of a roof of some kind, I guess. On the way to go get some of the airdropped food, we get a call from Trish, and they exchange their I love yous, so they're confirmed to be together, and Trish is still broken up about losing Amy, her sister, presumably in the blast, I guess? Once we arrive at the food, it's stuck, so we get it down in a tutorial, get shown a comic strip lore intro to the Reaper enemies, which is perfectly fine, take them all out, and then we get our first choice. Shock the people away to keep the food for Cole, Zeke, and Trish, or don't shock anyone and let everyone share the food. Character-wise, this is fine, but this definitely doesn't do anything for a mechanically oriented player early on. I knew food wasn't going to matter for anything in the game, so I let other people have some, sure. If food was a resource of some kind, this might have been a bit more interesting. Here's where the big problem shows up. Right after, the hacker cultist guy goes on the TV and shows a video shot of Cole holding a package. He's calling Cole a terrorist who's responsible for the blast that killed countless people. It's hard to even make out what's being shown on the screen or what's going on, and then we get another comic strip scene. We finally get a glimpse into the moment before the blast. Cole was apparently running late and was delivering a package, the one that exploded, but he doesn't remember it. I think he's like a bike messenger or something, I don't know, I don't think it's actually said in the game. Now that he's been labeled a terrorist, everyone hates him, and Trish leaves him, I guess. They are now broken up. The previous story-specific comic strip was 14 days worth of information, and this one seemed similarly packed with stuff going on, but apparently everything that was happening during it was taking place right where we were standing, and after it's done, you're in the same spot. Regardless of your choice before this, the people nearby turn on you and begin throwing rocks and beating Cole. This was a huge juxtaposition, as right beforehand on my first playthrough, the screen of "your actions have made you slightly more heroic" had only just faded away. I was so confused at what was going on that I just stood there, and they fucking killed him. They killed Cole, and then he gets teleported back to the rooftop. Simply put, this is all pretty bad. Up to this point, I was giving Infamous my full trust. I was absolutely ready and willing to love this game. I was captivated by the premise, by the visuals, by the potential I predicted Infamous would build towards, but this didn't work for me at all. The hacker on the TV wasn't prominent enough in the scene, the video of Cole and the accusation of him being the one who caused it wasn't clear to me as it was happening, and the following comic strip scene made me feel like I had to play catch-up with all the information being dished out. I've only known these characters for 10 minutes. I didn't even remember Zeke was the name of the guy I ran here with, and now he's making funny faces at Cole, and Trish, my character's girlfriend of 3 minutes, broke up with him, kinda, because Cole had something to do with the death of her sister Amy, which is a name I've only heard twice now. The lack of information in the opening explosion is used to make this reveal a bigger deal, but we don't even get all the details, Cole doesn't remember it, and we barely get to digest it. There being a mystery to unravel is a lot of fun. I adored trying to figure out what was going on when first playing Dead Rising 1 and 2, and in many ways, Infamous feels a lot like that. But the way the information is doled out is sporadic and incredibly underwhelming. We get this random and abrupt cutaway to the comic strip sequence, and later on in one of the substations, Cole opens up even more in a radio call of all things. George, whoever that is, told Cole he had to deliver this package, and when he finally got to the destination, someone called him and told him to open it, causing the explosion.
George. He's the one who called me. Said he's got a package burning up all over his desk and that I needed a beeline in there. Someone calls and tells me to open the package. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in a crater.
Oh, okay. Glad Cole remembered it now, I guess. Much later on, we'll get clued in on a few more bits, but they're as forgettable as this one here, if not more, since they take place during a mission in a radio call.
Tried to stop you from opening the package. If I had been a minute faster, I wouldn't even be here.
So what happened?
Lost me when you ran a red light. Amazing, isn't it? One red light, look what happens.
Oh, John tried to stop Cole from opening the package, but Cole ran a red light. That red light is the difference between everything. People living and dying, the city collapsing or being totally fine, Cole being Lightning Man or just a normal guy. If this was supposed to be some jab about the significance of seemingly insignificant events, which can dramatically shape the world and everyone in it, it doesn't land at all. Being told about it 15 hours into the game, off the cuff, isn't the cherry on top of this thematic sundae that Sucker Punch thinks it is. As much as the opening explosion is a great way to start a video game, to get players controlling Cole immediately, I can't help but think how much more powerful this all would have been if we had a cutscene of what led up to the explosion. George or whoever calling Cole about the package, establishing who Cole was before the blast, showing him driving or biking, whatever, through the red light and having us think nothing of it at the time. Maybe even show him leaving Trish's place and let us be introduced to Amy, so her death means a little more than the reason Trish is the way she is. 2 minutes is all it would have taken, but instead, those 2 minutes are hidden from the player for no reason other than to make the terrorist reveal mean something, except it doesn't since it's so jarring and fast-paced. Even if the pacing wasn't super wonky here, the comic book sequences invite a disconnect that other games don't. These scenes are practically cutaways, and given that the very first one after the blast escape featured a time skip, my assumption was that the whole purpose of these comic book expository dumps was to expedite the process of relaying information that wouldn't work in-game, that wouldn't be fun to play in real time. The reason why the city is how it is, the 14 days that pass where Cole is in the hospital getting his powers, and the citizens are in turmoil over their new life, hell, the Reaper introduction and their backstory. But here, this one is recounting the scene that we're already in. 2 weeks pass in the opening scene, but 20 seconds at most pass here. Why show Trish walking away in comic form when she can walk away in front of us? Why have Zeke look at Cole funny in a comic strip when he can look at Cole funny in the game world, in a normal cutscene? After you get your bearings, the mob attacks you, either you run away or die like I did, and then you're meant to meet up with Zeke as they attempt to flee the island. After we try to escape through the bridge full of guards, a wall of gunfire starts up, Zeke and Cole make a run for it, jumping into the sea, but Cole is captured instead by the FBI. Moya, the main FBI agent we talk with, wants him to go back into the city to find John, her husband, who she lost contact with a couple weeks ago. John isn't actually her husband, but that doesn't factor into much for what I'll be discussing in this video, so ignore that. All you need to know is that he's an NSA agent who is infiltrating the First Sons organization, a superhero villain group sort of thing, who are trying to create a ray sphere, a device that has the power to drain all the electric energy out of a group of people and concentrate it into one person. Cole has to find the ray sphere and find John, and then Moya and the FBI will clear his name and let him leave the city, otherwise he's still a terrorist until then. It's quite the crazy coincidence that Dead Rising 2 and Infamous, released about a year apart from each other, both feature a main character who needs to clear their name of a terrorist act, both wear yellow jackets, both have a one-syllable name, and they both start with a C? What are the odds there? This is basically where the game really begins, as now the world and side missions and such open up. The main missions are generally all requests from Moya that help the city in some way, or requests from Trish or Zeke, sometimes altruistic, like Trish wanting to help as many people as she can, or sometimes extremely selfish, like Zeke wanting you to track down some girl's brother so he can potentially get enough goodwill so she'll hopefully sleep with him. After you find the guy dead, he even says this.
Dwight's dead, Zeke. Someone really messed him up.
Oh, man. His sister's gonna flip out when I tell her that. Well, hell, you should find the guys who did it. I can play off that angle, maybe. Come on, man, I need this.
Zeke is an interesting character, probably the best part of Infamous's character and story arcs as a whole. He starts out as a kind of annoying best friend, and at first, he's elated that Cole has powers. He thinks it's the coolest thing ever, being best buds with a superhero, wow! However, that isn't enough for him. He says right away that he doesn't want to be anyone's sidekick.
Sure, I could use a sidekick.
Ah, hell with that. Zeke Jedediah Dunbar is his own man.
And he can't get the attention and glory that Cole gets by simply being his friend.
I get used to living like this.
You're not actually a superhero, Zeke.
Well, hell, I know that. But it doesn't change the fact that I've had a taste of the good life.
Having these powers isn't exactly a walk in the park.
Are you nuts? Folks might run when they see you, but not one of them would ever cross you. That's real power.
Having these powers isn't exactly a walk in the park.
Are you crazy? People around here, they worship you, man.
The envy builds and builds throughout the game, but it doesn't dominate the conversations.
Get her your autograph. And what am I, your butler? You know there's a Cole fan club now? I swear, people around here must have some free time. You clean up a neighborhood, and everybody takes to the streets a-dancing and a-strutting. I try and tell them I'm your right-hand man, but do they care? No. I gotta give me some powers, man.
You get so much radio and screen time with Zeke that the, in retrospect, obvious signals that he'll do something dumb in the future are easy to overlook, as they blend in with all of the other interactions. He's clearly not a good guy. In fact, he sounds more like a classic nice guy archetype, if anything.
Sees me as a friend. I'll always be your friend, Zeke. She actually said that to me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, women are something else. Never will understand them.
And after a lot of time doing nothing behind the scenes, he starts to take action himself. He wants some of what Cole has. Even though he's been very anti-cop previously, he starts to view helping them as a way to get glory for himself. It starts with Moya telling us that Zeke has been calling her, offering to help track down leads.
Tell your friend Zeke to stop calling me. If he wants to play hero and track down leads, that's his business. But I don't need to hear about it.
I'm not sure how he got her number, but ignoring the semantics, this would be pretty disappointing to hear if you were Cole. Going behind his back to ask his FBI boss for work? The one that's basically holding him hostage in this city? The one that Zeke himself said was a scary black project leading threat that he shouldn't trust?
Zeke, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, Zeke, what are you doing is right. He eventually snoops around and tries to get information on the Dustmen, but gets captured, and you're forced to infiltrate their hideout and save him. This scene then plays.
Hell were you doing down here?
I was just trying to help out, man. I wanted to sneak in and see what the trash baggers were up to.
Are you insane? You're lucky they didn't kill you.
What are you saying? That old Zeke needs to go back to his roof and just chill? That he's only good for a laugh and a beer, but when it's go time, he ain't worth a damn? That what you're saying, Cole?
This isn't a game, Zeke. Not anymore.
But just because you got powers doesn't make you better than everyone else. Not by a long shot.
I think you could view this in two different ways. One, Zeke is overextending himself and is becoming obsessed with the idea that he doesn't have powers. He's using this quarantine to get himself a fresh start. He's taking advantage of the situation to prop up his own ego. He's a sad man who is searching for an identity, but in reality, he's simply trying too hard to be like Cole, and is only going to get himself, or others, hurt. Even if not, he's becoming a burden to Cole, and Cole doesn't have time to keep rescuing him anytime he tries to play the hero. However, you could also view it a different way. Cole isn't the only person in the world with agency. Not everyone can hide in a bunker until Cole comes to save the day. There's a lot of stuff going on in Empire City, and berating your best friend and treating them like a child when they're only trying to do the exact same thing you're doing, help the city, is incredibly condescending and, in a way, plain selfish. Cole is only thinking about himself here, about how he doesn't want to keep spending his free time helping his friend, and that would obviously be a very shitty thing to hear if you were Zeke. This is all done so well, and it's only the first confrontation we've seen so far. It's pretty commonplace now for video games to be similar to movies with their character and plot progression, but for 2009, this is pretty impressive. I was expecting Zeke to just be a Stacy or Otis, your guy in the chair, calling you sometimes and, in the case of Zeke, providing comic relief. No, there's more to Zeke than that. There's more to Infamous than that. They make up shortly after on the radio, and a few missions later, we get another Zeke moment. Zeke's helping out with the police, trying to hold Alden, the second island's big bad guy, in prison while the Dustmen try to break him out. A funny aside, Zeke says he rigged up this electrified walkway for you, which is great and helps out during the mission, but if you come here long before this mission is set to start, where you aren't even supposed to be in the prison area yet, the electric current is running through it like it will be later on. Is Zeke lying and is taking credit for something he didn't do, or is this just a silly oversight the devs didn't account for? The fact that it's even a question shows you how good this game is. I'll go ahead and say that I don't think this is him taking credit for something he didn't do, as in the prison mission itself, Cole asks if it was Zeke's idea to restrain Alden in a specific way, and Zeke says no, it was the warden's idea.
Was that your idea?
Nah, Warden came up with it.
He could have lied to prop himself up in the eyes of Cole, but he didn't. See, Zeke isn't a complete slimeball. This mission is fucking insanity. Literally, an army tries to take you guys down, and you can sit up there and throw grenades until the cows come home. Cole tells Zeke to go help the guards lock down Alden, and eventually the power gets killed. A brief respite from the chaos. You'll have to climb all the way up the prison, do some parkour, take out some thugs, flip a switch, then come back down. Afterwards, some more mayhem. The music is so unique and fun for a lot of these story battles. Listen to this drumming. Finally, we hear Zeke say he wants payback, and comes out to fight again. Cole says he was supposed to be watching Alden with the other officers, Zeke says it's fine, and then...
By the time I got inside, it was too late. The place was slick with gore. Poor bastards never got any backup. If Zeke kept his post, they'd be alive now, and Alden would still be in a cage.
Alden escapes, these guards are dead, and it's all Zeke's fault. But once more, let's take a look at this from two perspectives. First of all, our narrator is Cole. Is he a reliable and infallible source? I'm not so sure, especially if you're down the evil path. He says if Zeke hadn't left his post, these guards would be alive right now, and Alden would still be locked up. There's at least 4 guards here, maybe 5, so either Cole thinks one extra person would have made the difference, or he thinks Zeke, his screw-up friend, is better at this than trained officers? There's no way he thinks the latter, and surely he's not dumb enough to think the former. This feels like Cole simply wants someone to blame. However, Zeke absolutely abandoned his post, he charged out to be the hero, and once again, his brashness and glory-driven motivations fucked something else up. This is becoming a pattern, and Zeke at this point should go home and stop trying to help. I'm genuinely undecided on which one I agree with completely. A little of column A and a little of column B, perhaps? Moya then says to cut Zeke loose that he's becoming a liability. Well, now it's 2 against 1, but how much do we trust Moya? I'm not going to talk about Moya in this video again, remember, so, she's untrustworthy. Just know that she's untrustworthy. Later, Trish calls about Zeke being at the hospital. I guess he's murmuring about the prison. Cole says Zeke is free while the cops guarding Alden are dead, and maybe Zeke should sit on the bench from now on. Later on, John, the NSA agent who's helping Cole at this point, says Cole should bring someone he can trust to go after the ray sphere at the top of Alden's tower. Cole doesn't have anyone else, except Trish, I guess, but either way, he calls Zeke. Zeke says this.
Need your help with something.
Oh, is that a fact? Well, you made it sound like I wasn't worth a damn.
Once you finish the skirmish at the top, Zeke is the one who manages to grab the sphere. I'll just let this scene play out.
Only time to escape, but he just stood there, petrified. You see, through the fear, he realized that the key to his dreams, the tool to make him superpowered, was right between his hands. Asshole makes the choice to kill thousands, stealing their lives so that he'll be transformed, and then... nothing. Everyone's fine. No change at all. Kessler's first to grasp the situation. Claims to know what's wrong. If Zeke brings him the ray sphere, Kessler will be able to give Zeke the powers he craves. My best friend looks me in the eye and then makes his second mistake. Alden goes ballistic at the loss of the sphere. The tower shakes and it starts to rip apart. But I was just dumbfounded, barely felt the impact.
This is quite possibly my favorite moment in the story. Not only does Zeke become more than the guy in your earpiece who roots you on, he has dissent with Cole that evolves into him betraying you and everyone in the city. His motivations are clear, he wants what Cole has, and he'll sacrifice others to get it, but even when he's given a second chance, the ray sphere doesn't go off, he still chooses to go with Kessler in hopes that he'll know how to make it work, for Zeke to become a true conduit like Alden, like Kessler, like Cole. All the build-up throughout the game with this character paid off for this moment right here, even if it didn't lead exactly where I wanted it to after the fact. I was hoping, given that Sasha was the boss of the first island and Alden was for the second, that Zeke would be the final fight in the final island. That's not what happened, sadly. Kessler is the main bad guy, and Zeke ends up coming to the rescue, kind of, in the final boss fight. He doesn't actually help at all, but this is his attempt at becoming a good guy again. The final cutscene is already filled with a lot of heavy stuff, so it makes sense they couldn't find a way to fit Zeke in, but I won't lie, his ending is a bit underwhelming. Trish is a bit complicated, as she's more malleable of a character, but because of that, she acts as a reflection of Cole more than her own person at times. She doesn't really have an arc besides how she feels about Cole. Let's just get into it. After Trish walks away from Cole as he was accused of being a terrorist who had a hand in her sister Amy's death, the two work together now and then, and it's a bit awkward. Understandable, their relationship was already being tested with her sister's passing, and Cole getting superpowers out of nowhere. The first time they meet, they're aiding sick people who were poisoned by the tar, and Trish is still pretty pissed, but she at least helps Cole when he gets the stuff in his face and starts hallucinating. Eventually, she contacts him about protecting a crate of medical supplies from the Reapers, and admits that she's only asking Cole because he's the only one she knows with superpowers. After you fend off the Reapers, Trish and Cole seem to be on good terms. Much later on, Trish wants your help again, and this time, the banter between the two is a bit more endearing and playful.
Should provide a non-stop source of energy for you.
Wow, that's really smart.
Oh, they don't let dumbasses into med school, Cole.
After the gauntlet that is the defend the bus mission, Alden fucking throws the bus onto a building, dangling precariously off the side, and Cole goes to rescue her. Here's where a big shift happens based on your alignment. Evil Cole sees his version of Trish get upset at him, berating him for hurting people and undoing all her efforts around town. Sleep downstairs if you like, but don't come around me.
You can sleep downstairs if you want. Just stay away from me.
Good Cole's Trish says she knows Amy's death wasn't Cole's fault, and she wants things to be how they were, and they presumably get back together. At least that's what the trophy says. On one hand, it's nice that the alignment impacts what happens with Trish, but it's hard to view her as her own character. She's a part of the system at play, a reward for being good, and the evil reaction doesn't even make much sense in the first place, in all honesty. It's not like Evil Cole gets to skip the Trish missions. The bus, the defend the crate, both of those are mandatory either way. If Trish was going to react like this for my evil self, I would have gladly told her to fuck off so I don't have to do the dreaded protect the bus mission again. This is what I mean when I say Trish doesn't really have an arc. She's not on the radio with you nearly as much as Zeke, so she gets less screen time in that regard, and all she ends up doing is saying, Cole, you're the best, or Cole, you're the worst. You could argue that she has more agency than other characters, since she's able to see what's happening to Cole and react to it, but that doesn't really track when you see how her character eventually ends up, especially when you figure out why she's dangling up on the roof in the first place. She's ultimately a game piece that gets used by Kessler and Cole, a well-functioning prop for the story, an inanimate object that will either spout lines of affection or lines of disdain towards the protagonist. Why bring Cole into this when it's clearly Kessler who's using her? You're right, he's the one who sets up the ridiculous either-or choice of rescuing Trish or 6 doctors. My bad, I got a little carried away. Kessler is to blame for this particular choice existing as it is. Who is Kessler? Well, he's been the man behind basically everything. He's been in charge of the First Sons, the villainous superhero group I mentioned earlier, for a very long time. He's the one who put the explosive in the package and picked Cole to be the delivery boy, I guess. He's the one John, the NSA agent I mentioned earlier, was sent to spy on. Kessler was the voice in Cole's head talking about his vital signs at the beginning of the game. He was the strange guy who implanted the knowledge of a horrific future into Cole's head randomly after an early mission. He's the one who gets Zeke to abandon his friend in hopes of superpowers, and once Cole gets to the historic district, Kessler starts setting up traps and tests for Cole. In 1 minute, these people will die, hurry and defuse the bomb, and so on. So this builds to the final test. Kessler has captured Trish and hung her up from the edge of a building. He's also hung up 6 doctors on a different building. All of them will be dropped in mere moments. Cole has to choose between saving the love of his life or rescuing 6 people who could, I guess, do more good in the world if they lived. This decision right here, sadly, is the worst in the entire game, and it has nothing to do with the premise of it. This trolley problem, except not really, but you get it, is good enough on one playthrough, a little ridiculous, but still, whatever. But do another playthrough and you'll quickly see how cheap this really is. No matter what you choose, Trish dies. If that was all it was, you could imagine a scenario where Kessler had the winning hand the whole time, where this could make sense and build up the villain even more. Trish was never even there, she wasn't any of them, they were all decoys, and Kessler kills her after the fact either way. But no, instead, the game literally cheats. If you go for the doctors, Trish falls to her death as the single person.
Please get us down! Trish!
If you go for Trish, for some reason, that single person is a decoy now, and Trish was actually one of the 6 doctors, and she falls to her death.
Trish!
Looks like I was wrong.
Get me out of this!
Trish needs to die for something later on to make sense, but to wholly negate the player's agency here is frankly insulting. If you're having trouble understanding why this is silly, let me explain it in a bit more detail. If you look at either one of these scenarios, either Trish is where she's supposed to be, or she's one of the 6 doctors as a ruse, this is a decision from Kessler that needed to happen before Cole makes his decision. Even if Kessler is shown to teleport himself and do other crazy things later, we can all agree that he probably doesn't have the power to swap 2 bodies in a moment's notice. Before Cole even sets foot onto this city block, the choice of where Trish would be hung up was made, but no matter what, Trish is behind the other door. For a single playthrough, this works perfectly fine. It kinda gives off Joker vibes, especially if you try to save Trish. You killed everyone by making the supposedly selfish choice. But the crux of all of this is the gotcha moment, the oh ho ho, Kessler knew which one you'd pick. Oh man, he's so devilish. Whoa. And the shock value isn't worth the knowledge of how cheap this non-decision actually is. So Trish falls either way, and as she's dying, she either tells Cole how proud of him she is, or how disgusted with him she is. Both for the same reasons, just opposite. You used your powers for good, you used your powers for bad. Sure. Zeke, given that he's in the guilty party by going with Kessler, apologizes over radio, but again, we don't get to see him until the very end, so this is all kinda who gives a shit. The final choice of the game ends up being tied to the ray sphere. Remember how I said there were only 2 decisions that will make players think for a second? The Trish one was the first, and this is the second. You and John zero in on its location and venture in to defuse it. Except, you're given a prompt. You can either absorb the power of the ray sphere, damning potentially thousands of people to their death, or you can destroy it so nobody can get this ridiculous power. And, not murdering a bunch of people most likely. Well, once again, either way it explodes and incinerates John. Bye-bye, John, we hardly knew ye. I looked up some lore, and I got some spoilers for Infamous 2. I feel like his death is really significant to the whole Kessler thing, but anyway. At the very least, the people nearby after the mission are all mostly dead when you activate it versus when you destroy it. Not quite the world-ending event I thought it'd be, but still, not bad. Kessler reacts differently too, and here's where a weird divide happens. In both of the major decisions, Kessler responds and approves or disapproves of what you did, except they're on opposite sides of the alignment. He wanted Cole to save the doctors, a deed deemed good by the game, and he wanted you to use the ray sphere, an evil action. I find it so bizarre, since nothing else in the game is encouraging you to split your karma decisions, but Kessler is the one exception. How odd. There's one more thing that makes this decision stand out, and I only realized it when loading back in on a whim to see what the blue version looked like. Much to my surprise, when you choose to activate the ray sphere, no matter where you were before, you become infamous. Even if you're currently a hero, it slams you all the way down the red alignment and locks you out of gaining goodwill from here on out. The half circle is almost all blacked out, except the single slice of red. This is by far the most important decision of the game, given its potential to dramatically sway alignment with a single button press. This is a ridiculously immense consequence. My jaw literally dropped when seeing the words, "You are now infamous." On one hand, a moral choice finally having a distinct and significant impact on your alignment is a welcome surprise, but given that this is the final thing you do in the game before the ending, there's something about it that doesn't hit right. Being the goodest boy with everything else in the game, only to instantly turn the most evil of all by using the ray sphere? It's good that it doesn't work the other way around. You can't be infamous, then destroy the sphere and become a hero, but even still, this would have felt better if it was a bit earlier in the game. As it is now, it almost resembles a choose your ending prompt, which makes a lot of the time spent playing the game before this feel a bit pointless in retrospect. My other issue is that I don't think the monologue beforehand sells this enough as a potentially good action. If this was meant to catch players by surprise and not be a choose your ending option, there needs to be a bit more at stake. Cole mentions that he could become more powerful than ever before, and nobody would dare to mess with him, but this paints the already obvious evil action as, well, an obviously evil action and nothing more. I think if Cole would have talked about how the sphere needs to be used on the right person, on him, so he can do more to help others to stop Kessler, it would have landed a bit better. He'd be trying to convince himself that it's a good idea, when it's clearly not. The importance of gaining strength to stop Kessler needed to be emphasized a bit more, to sell this idea to someone that isn't already on the evil path. Either way, the visual of Cole when he gets the ray sphere boost, with the blackened electricity, goes hard as fuck. This looks downright spectacular. My only complaint about it on a surface level is that you don't get to see it much, as you're only one Kessler boss fight away from the end of the game. Speaking of that, it's finally time to talk about Kessler. Up until the very last gameplay bit in the game, the final boss fight, he's been presented as the big bad guy villain, and that's it. I frankly didn't even want him to be the final boss. Every interaction with him was boring, and Zeke seemed to be a far more interesting option anyway. After you kill him, there's a cutscene. Obviously, it's the end of the game, but it's then revealed that Kessler is Cole. Kessler is from the future, a version of Cole who chose to run away when a new dangerous threat emerged. Apparently, he could have killed the beast at that point in time, but out of safety for his family, for Trish, he fled instead. They were hunted down anyway, he lost his loved ones all the same, and in his guilt and shame, he chose to use a new power he just acquired, somehow, to take a one-way trip back in time. He took over the First Sons, he doubled down on the Ray Sphere project, planned the blast itself that turned Cole into what he became. He organized the quarantine and spent time searching for Cole. He was behind all of it. He then made Cole go through trial after trial in an attempt at making Cole, a younger Kessler, into the man he needs to be to do the right thing, to face the beast that haunted his future. This is why Trish had to die, so this version of Cole wouldn't have anything weighing him down. The 6 doctors or 1 Trish decision was literal, which is why Kessler yells at you for picking her over the others. Like most twist endings, this has a degree of shock value that I appreciated at the time. In its defense, this is more interesting than Kessler being a random First Sons guy and being boring for most of the game, right? Exactly. However, this doesn't really work. I'm very open to time travel being a part of a narrative, but having it be a twist ending doesn't sit right with me. Kessler just isn't in the game enough to have the previous events recontextualized. Most of what's being recontextualized are events we're only briefly told about, usually from Kessler or in comic strip form. Ignoring the sequel that this is obviously baiting, this simply isn't a satisfying way to close the narrative. If somehow Infamous 2 was cancelled, this would be incredibly underwhelming, and almost resemble a cop-out of sorts. Guys, the antagonist wasn't boring, he was you. That's cool, right? Right? When stopping to examine the actions performed by Kessler throughout the game, and what came before, it looks even worse. If you chase down the dead drops that John left behind about his infiltration into the First Sons, it sounds like Kessler straight up tortured people. Was it in the name of science, to advance the Ray Sphere enough to give Cole the powers in the blast? Except, how the fuck did Kessler get his powers then? Did a different version of himself go back into his timeline and start up the big chain of events that gave him electric abilities? Is this a never-ending canon event, where every single Cole has to go back in time at a certain point to keep everything rolling and making sense? Don't even get me started on how he randomly gained the power to go back in time, as if that sounds good to hear. It borders on somehow Palpatine returned levels of ridiculousness. This all just sounds like a time paradox surrounded by a load of plot contrivances. Even if we're generous and go with the multiple timelines idea, it completely shifts our perception of Kessler as a whole. To an extent, this had to have been the purpose, since Cole hates him at the end, so should you, but everything on the third island is completely going overboard. What is the point of the mind-controlling balloons? Why even raise an army of these gas mask assholes in the first place? This is even ignoring the fact that Kessler caused the explosion at the beginning, damning the entire city. All of this is to... let me see here. Yes, train his younger self to defeat a guy who might not even become a thing in this timeline. Kessler killed Trish. He took her away from Cole to prepare him for what was necessary. You know what also could have done that? A fucking warning. A conversation. Cole even knowing half of this stuff to begin with is because Kessler showed it to him, unless he somehow can't control what Cole sees, which I wouldn't doubt going off of what we've seen so far with his wacky time travel skills. Just show Cole what's going to happen, tell him to get his family in a safe spot, and go whack the bad guy early, and be done with it. Fuck's sake, even Dragon Ball Z was smarter with its time travel multiple timelines gimmick. Trunks warned the people in the past, hoping it would change his future, but it didn't, yet it still gave them a good heads up, and Trunks gave Goku the heart medicine to keep him alive. He directly aided this timeline through goodwill and discussions, whereas Kessler, Cole, decided to go back and rip out the heart of his past self. If I can't have Trish, the younger version of myself shouldn't either? The killing of Trish decision hits even worse with this in mind. It was already a weird choice that didn't add up when you played the game twice, but now that we, and Cole, know he simply did that to remove any shackles that would hold Cole back in the future, in both alignments, Cole says he hates everything about Kessler, but he also says he'll be ready when the time comes. I understand this is building into a sequel, but to me, Cole is too quick to give him credit. Him saying the final line makes me think Cole sees Kessler's actions as justified, and that's extremely disappointing. For the greater good, Kessler tortured animals and humans, murdered thousands of people, if not more, mind-controlled half the population for no reason, and dealt lasting psychological damage to everybody else, assuredly. All because he didn't want to have a fucking conversation? Fuck off, Kessler, you suck. I guess I'm glad they did make a sequel, as it might make this ending worth it in retrospect once I get to it. If this was a one-and-done thing, I would have vastly preferred Zeke be the final villain. It would have made everything come full circle, ended the Zeke arc on a much stronger note, and provided some semblance of a fucking character to the main antagonist of the third island. Infamous might get lost in time due to the lack of preservation it's receiving, and how much it blends into the gaming landscape at the time, but it really is a great game. It has its stumbles, but on a moment-to-moment basis, the game is exciting, bombastic, and unique. It's not every day you get to play a third-person shooter where the guns are electric bolts, where you can grind on telephone wires, or even suck out the life force of helpless civilians so you can top off your ammo. The ham-fisted either-or moral choices were mostly surface level, but they were still fun. Choosing to murder a guy for more collectible shards, instead of simply letting him live and getting less, is so stupid and enjoyable. Being comically evil in a game is something a lot of people like, and when it's done the right way, like Infamous, there's a sort of campy charm to it. Some of the evil choices just make no sense at all and barely benefit you, but you'll pick the evil side anyway because it's funny. The lack of tangible rewards almost makes it better. You're completely giving in to the devil on your shoulder, performing murder in the name of getting advanced upgrades in the red alignment path. The exchange probably isn't worth it, but it's the deal you've made, it's the burden you're willing to bear. The powers are fun to use, the visuals are gritty and detailed and fun to look at, and the story and writing are, for the most part, pretty great. The whole Kessler thing isn't amazing, but most of everything else is at the very least interesting, and a few moments were genuinely really good. I could easily envision a better version of Infamous, both when it comes to the story and gameplay. But as it stands now, this is a terrific game. Oh, dang it, I was supposed to end this with a pun, like shocking or electric or something. Thanks for watching, folks. This took a bit of time, so I hope you like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, I hope you join my Patreon, where you can give me $2 or more to yell at me properly. See, it really only hits deep when I get insulted on Patreon, sorry to say. I know a lot of you voted that the Xbox 360 was your preferred console, but I'll admit I had already decided on Infamous, and was hoping the PS3 would get more votes to retroactively justify my choice. See, it's just like the saving Trish decision. It doesn't matter what you picked, I already chose beforehand. Ah, I brought it back around. Now that definitely deserves your admiration, right? No? Well, maybe I won't defuse the